Good afternoon, it's Jim in beautiful Beaverton, Oregon. It is the 2nd of September. It's a gorgeous day. We're filming in the afternoon today because I wanted you to see my water lily flowers. They only come out afternoon. So there they are. It's getting late in the year, but there are some. These other white flowers over here are water hawthorn flowers, and they'll get better as we get into fall. So you can see the tank water's cleared up nicely. Anyhow, all is well. But what I wanted to talk about today, last week one of my subscribers asked a pertinent question, and that was, do you have a parts list? And unfortunately the answer is no, I don't. And the more I thought about even trying to develop one, the more it came to me that as you go in different directions, I'm not sure how much good it would do. So that's a bad question, or bad answer to a good question. So what I think I'm going to do to see how I can go about this is to take the next 3 videos we do and break them into parts and go over how one might start an aquaponics system. So the first part, which will be today, I want to talk about different materials and types of tanks you might use for grow beds and for tanks and sumps. In the second part, I intend to show you how to plumb it all together and how to set it up so that it will actually function. And then in the third part, I want to talk about putting media in and fish and actually getting it up and running. So let's get started on the part A. So there are lots of different materials you might use for your fish tanks and media beds, but I thought I would concentrate on the types that I have used and that I know work. So I'm not going to go into any other kinds other than tanks that I'm currently using that I can vouch for. Let's start with the very simplest thing. This is Epdm. This is pond liner, a good grade of pond liner. This is the very same stuff that inner tubes are made out of, if you're curious as to what it is. I don't know what it is, but that's what it is. If you wanted to start by simply making a pond, digging a hole in the ground and going through that process and making a small pond, you could use this quite handily, and it's quite inexpensive. At this point, let me tell you, and we'll go over this real quick, the sump or the pond, every aquaponics system has to have a sump. What makes it a sump is it's the lowest place in the system, and it has a pump in it. So all the water flows into it and is pumped out. That makes it a sump. It can also be a fish tank. This one is a fish tank and a pump, or a sump, because it has fish in it. It doesn't have to be. So that's what makes it a sump. When you put in a sump, you don't need to cut a hole in it for a drain, because you are pumping the water out and draining the water in over the top. So you can use materials such as this that don't need to have any kind of hole in the bottom. So that's material number 1. Let's go on to material number 2, which is galvanized stock tank, which is what this is. This is a 300-gallon Balin galvanized stock tank. Makes a wonderful sump and fish pond, or fish tank. These can be readily gotten, however you say that, at farm supply stores. And also any kind of stock tanks. And they're a wonderful place to go to look at different sizes when you're trying to decide what you want to put in. So if you, let's say this is buried halfway in the ground, if you put one that wasn't buried right next to it, you could then put a pipe through, pump the water to it, let it drain back, and this one would then be a fish pond or fish tank, and this one would be a sump that had fish in it. Anyhow, that's the type number 2. I think a lot of this stuff, and it's real easy to come by and it's cheap. So those are good things. Let's go inside the greenhouse and I'll show you the other 2 types that I use. Okay, the third type that I'm going to go over is a molded poly. This is also a stock tank. That particular one is a 150-gallon stock tank. They're not really conductive to putting holes in, but they make excellent sumps, and that's what I'm using this for, is just a sump. If I drop fish in there, then it would be a sump with fish. So that's number 3, and these, like I said, I would almost certainly use this for a sump if that's all I was going to do with it, and bury it and put a sump in again. And then let's go to the last type, which is my favorite and the most expensive and the hardest to come by, and that's fiberglass. These are Pentair 150-gallon fiberglass tanks with glass fronts. This is very, very thick glass on there. If you get a tank with a viewport, make sure it's glass and not plastic. The plastic will scratch real easy. These are very difficult to come by if you live in Portland, Oregon. If you live in Florida, you probably have a good shot at getting these because they have a lot of them down there. Places where they farm fish have these kind of tanks, and places that don't have them. The first 2 that I got of the 3 came in broken. I had to send them back, and it took a long time to get them, so that's something you have to be aware. They also made these grow beds, fiberglass, which are wonderful things. Also Pentair, and they stack inside each other, so they're much easier to ship. And these make really nice grow beds. So anyhow, the nice thing about the fiberglass is if you need to, like I need to get back there, you can just get up on it, just climb around on it like a gymnasium. The hardest part, after you've done this, so on, is trying to remember how you got up there. Anyhow, the tip of the day, and in order to demonstrate it, I'll show a picture in a minute. When you are measuring your tanks or your grow beds, many times people you send for will give you the dimensions on the inside of the tank, not on the outside of the tank. The difference between the inside dimension and the outside dimension on one like this is about 7 or 8 inches, which is a huge amount. So when you buy your tanks or grow beds or whichever, just make awfully sure that they're the right size inside and outside. I'll show you why. If you come over here and you look right there, you'll see I had to cut a hole in the wall to get these tanks in. And that's, I hate to show that, but that's something you will have to live with. And you'll do the same kind of thing, just make sure you measure 3 or 4 times and then buy once. We'll see you next week.